Welcome everyone, thanks for coming to my session today. So I ran 10 minutes over my dry run, so I'm going to have to fly through this pretty quickly, but I'll always make my slides available after my presentation. So what is a quick-to-market game? A quick-to-market game is something that's done very quickly. Obviously, they're simple, minimalistic, addictive. They definitely lack long-term retention. Most games are deleted within, 71% of them are deleted within the first day. We kind of call them arcade-to-death mechanics. And what we're trying to do at QuickByte Game is really revolutionize that, and we're going to show you that in a little bit. So kind of think about Catch App and the types of games that they make. We're trying to do this and take it to the next level. So just quickly through, in terms of who we are, we're a team of 3 AAA mobile developers that have worked on big AAA mobile games. And what we have done is we've confined them and said, okay, you don't get a year and a half, you don't get a $3 million budget, you get 8 weeks. We'll give you access to AAA technology, AAA resources, and AAA expertise, but you have to make a game in 8 weeks or less. And the idea here that we oppose upon the team is every game has to include a new agnostic technology stack. In other words, something that can be used for the game, for the next game, and the next game, and the next game. So as we continue to build our games, each one gets better and better, includes more features that help improve the major KPIs. So just so you guys understand, we're actually powered by Hybridum. So QuickByte Games actually has no employees. All of our employees are entirely Hybridum. We're based in Montreal, about 140 people, been in business for a while. We're most known for some of the games we did with Disney, along with Scopelink and some of our own. So that's where the AAA technology and AAA resources come, is from Hybridum being an independent studio now for 11 years. So let's just talk a little bit about QuickByte Games. Just so you know, just quickly, our track record. We released Ches beginning of this year, 7 weeks of development. We have surpassed 1 million downloads, followed by Blasty Bubs, did much better ARPDAU, better rewarded ads per user. Then we released Canyon Crash, again, increase again in daily sessions, increase in ARPDAU. So each game is getting better and better and better because we are taking this agnostic technology stack approach. And then Lapse, which comes out very soon, was done in 4 weeks. And I'm going to give you guys, I guess, a sneak peek of what that looks like. So let me talk about the process we take when we actually are making a quick-to-market game. So I say, okay, it's 8 weeks of development. Well, yes, it's 8 weeks of development, but it takes much, much longer than that to actually release the game. One, we have a game designer that is constantly doing nothing but pumping out prototypes every 2 days, so that when we are ready for our next game, we have a prototype that we've all approved upon and we're ready to put into development. Because we are quick-to-market, our QA is really done really quickly, and I'll talk about that. Our soft launch is no more than 3 or 4 days, and that leaves a little bit of time for optimization. What we have found is that for once in my career, because I've done AAA console, I've done AAA mobile, I've done it all, is that for once marketing can't keep up. So when game development ends, our games don't really come together until the last week. We have to actually stop development and give marketing time to actually catch up, to create the trailers, create the screenshots, work with our platform partners, and that's when the second game is going into development. So a lot of times when we actually launch, which is sometimes 4 to 5 weeks after the end of development, our team is really not that excited. Like, I'll come running around like, hey guys, we got featured, and all of our games have been featured worldwide. They really don't show a lot of excitement because it's been 4 weeks, they've moved on, and they're already thinking about the next game. Yeah. So some of the struggles. We have a serious game design pipeline problem. I think everybody here has game ideas. I could probably hold a whole session where we can all talk about some of the games we want to make. No offense, but most of them are horrible. Few are acceptable, and really none are perfect. And we're constantly prototyping, and about 95% of them we cancel. Which gets to something that I've been saying my entire career, which is bury the dead, and bury the dead early. So we put games into prototype, we give them a week. If it continues to pass the review process, we'll give them another week. If it doesn't, we kill it and we move on. And that's very important. We talked about, Josh talked about it last time, about how they're too close and attached to a project. We have that same problem, but you got to bury the dead, bury them early, move on. So right now I'm actually going to give you a demo of what our prototyping process is. So this is stuff that is done in 1 or 2 days. Feel free to take notes, steal some ideas here, take a video. But there was a wrestling game. This one is an interesting one we actually might do. You throw a toothpick in the air, and again, this was done in just a day. This one was done a day, and you have to make a sandwich, and yeah, and then it turns back around, and the idea is he's supposed to catch the bread there to finish the sandwich, so he didn't do it, so I don't think he's going to get a good score. And then as you get closer to the end here, this is where, bam, dirty bacon melt. And that's a prototype. I mean, that's just something that was done in 1 or 2 days. And then we kind of have to sit there and ask ourselves, okay, how can we actually envision this being a real game? And this is another game that was a modular game. I really hate space games. I don't recommend people doing space games. And this prototype was done in about a day and a half, just by one person. And he's just constantly pumping these things out, and we're putting them into review. We're getting people's feedback. We're asking ourselves, how can we serve ads? Where are we going to serve ads? Is this something that, with done properly, we can get featured by the major platform holders? Unfortunately, I'm going to have to move on, but those are just some of the examples. Now, this is what a finished product looks like. This is Canyon Crash, featured worldwide, launched about 4 or 5 weeks ago. Has about 13 different characters. The idea is to fall as fast as possible, collecting coins before a little red laser at the top catches you and ultimately brings you to your death. And for 4.7 stars, again, yeah, featured. We really like it, really enjoyed it. And it was done in 7 weeks, and we really think that's amazing. Next, I'll give you a sneak peek at our next game, Laps, which was done in 4 weeks. A very elegant game. We took kind of the threes concept. We really loved the game threes, but no one's really evolved it. No one's really +1'd it. They've just straight up copied it. So this is where you match numbers. If you do a match 3 with the same numbers, it kind of evolves to the next set of numbers. And this is looking to come out next week or the week after. We haven't decided yet, but right now the retention and the monetization on this thing is ridiculous. I think we hit a 61% day 1 retention on this game. And a game that's 3 people in 4 weeks. Yeah. So bugs, right? When you're doing rapid development, you really have to learn fast. You're going to make mistakes, and sometimes when you do make those mistakes, you really have to just move on. If it's something we think it's going to impact 5% or more of the users, then sure, we have to go back and fix it. But within an 8-week cycle, because of the budgets we're working under, and we know how much revenue we can make from it, you just have to learn and move on. But it all does start with a solid game design document and game flow mockup. If you start with that and you have your core pillars in terms of how you plan to retain your users, how you plan to monetize your users, and how to keep them engaged while they're playing, as long as you stick to that, we have found it worked out pretty well. And we always leave at least 1 week of rapid development. So when we do finish at week 6 or week 7, and we throw it in soft launch, we get that data, we do leave an additional week to rapidly develop the game. And we always say, that's not a bug, that's a feature. And if you play a lot of our games, people have found certain bugs that actually make the game more enjoyable. And as long as we come across a bug or something that's weird, we ask ourselves, is it fun? Is this something that people would actually share on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook? And if it's a yes, then we don't call it a bug, we flag it as a feature. And talking about rapid development, so this is what we do. We throw our games into soft launch 2-3 days. That's it. Throw a couple $1,000s, throw it in the Philippines. We get the data back. And then we do 2 days of development. This is our game Blasty Bub. So at first, didn't look so hot. I mean, it was pretty horrible retention, reward ads per user, just across the board. But within 2 days, we were able to bring up retention to 31%, which is still a little bit below our 40% objective, but this was done in the Philippines, and when we launched globally, we were able to hit, I think, 42 or 43%. But it does go to show you that, with this rapid development process, as long as you have the right mindset, you can make these changes. Now we talk about monetization. What we have found now is consumers have gotten used to these quick-to-market games. They can spot them. They know that this is a game that they're only going to play for maybe an hour, maybe a day, at most 7 days. And what we've learned over the years is that especially now, when people are making in-app purchases, they're viewing it as an investment. They're saying to themselves, I'm not spending $5 just for now. I'm spending $5 so that I can build my character up and use them for the next week, the next month, or the next year. So we found that in-app purchases for these quick-to-market games they actually don't work. So we spend, and we have a whole ROI process in terms of measuring development time, but it has even been suggested, and you'll see in some of our games, we might not even do in-app purchases. The one that we've found that works the best in terms of time to implement and QA is something that just unlocks all. Just have one in-app purchase, unlocks the whole game, unlocks all the characters. We have found that it actually works best. The best, of course, is rewarded ads, rewarding the player to watch an ad and afterwards they get some type of soft currency or some type of reward. Forced ads, I know we're starting to move back past that, but unfortunately it is kind of a necessary evil. Some people don't always want to partake in the rewarded ads. Some consumers are so addicted and hooked to your game even after day 30 that you can actually get away with serving ads every 3.5 minutes to them. And as long as you do it to the right cohorts that are exhibiting the right behaviors, it actually works in your favor. So some of the best ads that we've kind of come across, and I will say that right from prototype, the second you put a game into prototype, you always need to think how are rewarded ads going to be intertwined during the GDD and game process, as well as the retention engagement. All has to be thought out very early on. But when it comes to the best rewarded ad types, one is we found that when you give players an incentive to keep playing, to play the next game, not the current game, to play the next game, we actually found that converts better than any other one. So examples would be, I always use Burrito Bison. If you haven't played Burrito Bison, it's a great game and it exhibits a great example. In Burrito Bison, while you're playing, you basically can collect a piñata, which is the ability to watch the ad at the end of the game that gives you a boost for the next game. Right? And that's an incentivized ad, a rewarded ad that encourages the players to keep playing. And we have found that that works best. And I was talking to Chris from Tap Deck earlier today, and he told me about a new interesting one that I just come to find out, which was there's a game, it was called
Blocky Football.
That's right, Blocky Football, where it asks you to watch an ad. And if you watch an ad, you won't get an ad for another 10 minutes. And yeah, and I find that very interesting. I actually think that's really unique. You're basically giving them the incentives to keep playing, and that's the biggest problem we have with these quick-to-market games is that we need to get players hooked, and we need to get players hooked early. And from our research, you got about 300 to 330 seconds. If you can't get them engaged and hooked to your game, they're going to delete it. So just something by the numbers here. We're always looking for a blended ECPM of about $17. So since we typically do get featured worldwide, we do have to deal with countries like India, Russia, Eastern Europe, South America, where the ECPMs are low. If you're talking about tier 1 countries, ideally you want to see something in the range of at least $20 to $30. But blended together, $17 is something that we're happy with, and that's USD. We want about 4 ads per engaged user per day. So in other words, an engaged user is someone who watches an ad. So someone who actually watches an ad, we want them to watch at least 4 ads in total per day. What we have found the threshold to be 3.5 minutes in between ad viewing. Anything more, if you force and try to force anything more, we find that it significantly hurts retention, or I should say less on the time, and if you wait more time, you're just wasting money, you're leaving money on the table. And ideally overall, you want to serve about 2 ads per user per day. And that's a good, I would say, medium to high average. I've certainly seen games surpass that if they do it properly, but that's what you should be shooting for when you talk about monetizing your game with advertisements. It's all about retention. Whether you're making a AAA game or a III game, if you're making a mobile game, and especially if it's free to play, everything is about retention. For some of the bigger games, you got about 10, 15, even 20 minutes to get the player hooked. In these quick-to-market games, you get 1 session, and almost in some cases, just 1 game. 300 seconds, that's it. If they're not hooked or engaged, we see about 60% of our players delete the app just after 1 session. Just after 1 session, 1 game, 300 seconds. So we think our players are a lot like goldfish. We have to get their attention and get them hooked as fast as possible, because if we don't keep their attention, they're going to jump and go to a different game and delete yours. So let's talk about QA. QA is very expensive, but it's something that is a necessity, and we have done it well. Ches, our first game, was 4.0 stars. We made a couple of mistakes and learned from them. Our next 2 games, 4.5, 4.7 stars, so we're doing it right. And the way we do it is we actually get the people in office to help us with QA without really letting them know they're helping us. So what we do is we have daily high scores, whether it's a high score or a length or whatever the metric we're using to measure success in the game. We throw it out to our employees every day we have a high score, and we'll let our employees know who got the highest score. And while we're doing that, we're asking them to submit bugs along with that. And that's a good way for us to get some free QA. We have beta testers, so we have a list of about 200 beta testers that we fished throughout the internet. We went onto, Touch Arcade forums and various mobile forums and say, hey, we need beta testers for our games. And of course, people love to play games before they come out, and we use them. And then we do a final QA process. So far, QA hasn't cost us a penny. It doesn't cost us anything at all. And then finally, what we do when we're ready to say this game is done, what we do is a final QA 3-hour process, which is the whole team, our marketing team. We have a pre-defined checklist of everything we need to go through, and we all get 3 hours. We each have different devices. We each have different objectives and goals, and that's it. And then after that, we basically log it into Jira, and we fix the bugs, and then we move on from there. So our QA costs us about 3 hours times 6 people. So we keep it very cheap. And I was speaking to a couple of larger publishers this week who are looking into this market and really laughed at me when I said our QA process was that short. But I mean, it speaks for itself. I mean, we have a 4.5 plus star rating across all of our games. People love our games. So we're obviously doing something right on that. What we do, and we do have a specialized list so that if certain devices or certain screen resolutions, we believe it's going to impact over 5% of our users, it's something that needs to be fixed. Anything less, we generally let slide, and if it does become an issue, then we'll obviously issue an emergency update, which to date we have not been in the situation where we actually had to do that. So let's just go in summary. I'm making good time here. I actually might be able to do Q&A. All right. I will say I've done a lot of mobile games throughout the years. As a research and analytics, I've worked on over 200 games. I've published myself at least 15 to 16 games, probably actually closer to 20. Doing these quick-to-market games have by far probably been the most difficult games I've ever had to make, because you can't, if you make a mistake, you don't have the time to really go back and fix it. You kind of have to just learn and move on. Dealing with ad monetization was something that I think was new to me as I moved into this quick-to-market style of games, and we really learned early on that we have to be deciding this stuff in prototype. Very much back in the day when we were thinking about, when we were doing our first free-to-play games, we would kind of tack on the free-to-play stuff at the end. Well, we obviously realized, no, we got to be thinking about that from the start. Same thing with ad monetization. You need to be thinking about that from the start. And then document everything. I try to create as clean and crisp as documentation as you can at the beginning of the project, and then from there you really just got to play it by ear. We try not to weigh our teams down too much with Jira or Trello. We do use it for bugs, but we do find that taking the extra time to log in tasks and log in various priorities, it doesn't work. So we've created our own slimmed down version that we use in Excel and Sheets that has worked exceptionally well. And then just understanding that mistakes will happen, and there's really no time to fix them. You really got to move forward. I know that being in free-to-play for a while, having a soft launch game, usually you want a soft launch for at least 60 days. If you still don't have the metrics you are desiring, you keep going another 90 days, 120 days, and you kind of keep drawing out. But the way the budgets work, the budgets on these projects are so small, the revenue opportunities on these things are equally small. We have to understand that we can't be spending time on this stuff. We have to keep moving and move on. And I know it sounds like a ridiculous assumption that, okay, what if our games make, say, 100,000 or 150,000? That's not a lot of money. But when you're able to do that and launch a new game every 4 to 6 weeks, that kind of adds up over time. And yeah, I talk about, okay, Ches, our first game that we launched, did 1 million downloads. Oh, okay, well, great. But if you're able to do that every 4 weeks, and then you have this whole library for cross-promotion, then at the end of the year, you're talking about us having being able to achieve anywhere from 12 to, right now we're estimating 12 to 18 million downloads, which for 3 people I think is a pretty spectacular job. And whereas some of the bigger publishers want to invest, and at Hybrid, we work on the big games, right? We'll invest a couple of $1 million and take 2 years to wait until we have to be able to recoup that money. What we're doing here is we're constantly spending and recouping, so we find the model actually works out really well if you're organized and you know what you're doing. So I guess I have time for one question. Is that?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. If anyone has a question, there we go.
Bring a mic over because we're recording it.
No softball questions either. Like make them real. Yeah. Throw a curve on it. Do it in French.
On? Okay. You had mentioned that like you spend a day or two on prototyping, and then it goes to committee, and then in the committee you decide whether to develop it into a full-featured game. Can you provide some insight into what's that process in that committee? Like what's the decision-making process in order to continue working on that?
Yeah, so we actually, over the years, we've built up, so this is something, even though we just started this year, something we're very passionate about. We've built up, I guess you can say, a correlation or an analytics system, and we basically go down a list of checkboxes of yes or no's. And some of the things, I won't reveal them all, but one, it has to be played vertically, it has to be played with one hand, it has to be played without sound, and we go through that, and that basically ranks a score, and that score correlates very well to successful quick-to-market games. In terms of the committee, we just essentially every Friday we sit down. We have usually 1 or 2 prototypes in front of us. We go through the checklist really quickly, and then we essentially do a yay or nay, and then we do have the person who leads QuickBytes ultimately kind of has veto power over all of that, but generally goes, I generally do go with the group, but sometimes I don't, especially if it's anything with mechs, robots, or outer space. Yeah, I don't make a lot of friends because I cancel a lot of games. Like, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the talk. It's really informative. What's the expected lifetime for these types of games for your players?
When you're talking about in terms of retention?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, our goal is 40% day 1 retention. We want 20% day 7 retention, and then 3% day 30 retention. So basically, we only have so much time. So we build a game that basically retains very well for 7 days, and then from there, there's just not enough content. Now, if a game like takes off, like I think Laps, we love that game. If it takes off, then we start adding more content and we start fixing it. But otherwise, we just move on.
Thank you.
Yep.
How has the AAA culture of Hybridum adapted to what you guys are doing?
They love it. I mean, this is a team, an organization where people are able to come in and do whatever. With Hybridum, we're so used to working on IP branded projects, which we love to do. This gives a lot of employees the ability to express a lot of freedom and creativity. So we actually do have a process within the company, and I know I'm over time, I'll be real quick. We actually have a really great process where people can submit their ideas. So there's a template, they submit a prototype, a screenshots, answer a couple of questions. So the entire organization is actually able to participate in this process. So it's actually been extremely great for morale. All right, well, thank you.
Jesse.